Tales from the Parallels Part 3. Sometimes when a person is dead, they're not. They just pop back up again. Here are a few cases of people who were dead and gone and just popped back up again. In 1970, Master Sergeant Mateo Sabag was preparing to return to the United States from Vietnam. He was supposed to head from Saigon to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, but he never showed. The Army only learned of his disappearance when his brother, Kenneth, wrote a letter asking about his whereabouts in 1973. Sabag was believed to be a deserter, but a second letter from Kenneth caused the Army to declare him dead in 1979. Then, in 1996, Sabag reappeared seemingly out of nowhere. It seems that he simply walked away from the military and began living with a woman in California. After her death, he applied for Social Security, revealing his identity. Still considered active military, Sabag briefly became the oldest serving soldier until returning to his family. His only remark was, "I'm sorry." He died in Hawaii in 2007. Keep in mind many of the people listed here had no idea where they were. The complicated conflict between the Soviet Union and Afghanistan in the 1980s ended in both bloodshed and confusion. One victim of the war was Bakratdin Kakimov, a native Uzbek who was believed to have died in 1980 after being seriously wounded. After his official death, Kakimov was apparently treated with herbs by a medicine man. Kakimov eventually became a medicine healer himself, going by the name of Sheikh Abdullah. He later married an Afghan woman and lived through the U.S. invasion in 2001. Kakimov was found by the Committee for International Soldiers in 2013, 33 years after his death. While he remembered his family, he couldn't speak Russian very well and still had nervous tics relating to his time in the Red Army. Otherwise, Kakimov was fine despite his long disappearance. Teruo Nakamura was conscript from Taiwan who was stationed on the island of Morita when the Allied forces attacked in 1945. Nakamura and a few other Japanese soldiers hid in Morita's jungles and never learned of Japan's surrender. After an argument, Nakamura left his group in 1956 and lived almost entirely alone. He built a hut and lived off whatever crops he grew along with supplies he stole from a nearby village. Villagers tried to tell him about Japan's surrender, but he wouldn't budge. In February 1974, another holdout named Hiruo Nada was found and returned to civilization. In December, Nakamura, too, would return after a platoon of Indonesian soldiers dressed in Japanese uniforms pretended to rescue him. He returned to Taiwan as the last official Japanese holdout and died in 1979. Could he have been in another dimension, where the Japanese never lost? In 1981, Surjit Singh left India, not to return for 30 years. His family never knew what happened to him and presumed him dead. Surjit was alive but being held prisoner in Pakistan. He was a spy who was sent to Pakistan, but after he was caught, India denied the mission. In 1985, Surjit was sentenced to death, but after pleading for mercy, his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. He was allowed no communication and was kept in isolation. In 2004, Surjit was allowed to mail a letter to his family to inform them that he was alive. Finally, in 2012, he was allowed to return to India, where he freely admitted to being a spy and criticized the Indian government. For restitution, the government provided him with funds to improve his family farm. Surjit has become an advocate for other Indians still held in Pakistan. I guess when you can't explain where you have been, it's just as easy to say that you're a spy. In 1958, Ishina Shukowano was stationed at Russia's distant Sakhalin Island and went missing for decades. His family had him declared dead in 2000. Little did they know that Uwano was actually alive far away in an unlikely part of the world. In 2006, Uwano was discovered alive, living in Ukraine. Most of his circumstances from 1958 to 2006 remain murky, but it seems that in 1965, he went to Kiev and wasn't permitted by the Soviet Union to contact his family in Japan. He married and started a family after assuming Ukrainian citizenship and giving up any hope of returning to his home country. Officials searching for missing soldiers in the former Soviet Union were shocked to find Iwano alive. He was allowed to return to his family, whom he visited after being separated all those years. Although he was happy to be home, he chose to return to Ukraine, where he had built his own life. Wow, a 58-year gap. Sometime cases like this and other take a horrible twist. In 1961, 31-year-old Joan Risch lived in Lincoln, Massachusetts, with her husband, 4-year-old daughter, and 2-year-old son. On October 24, Joan's husband was out of town, and her daughter went to a neighbor's house. When the girl returned home, Joan was gone, and her infant son was sleeping unattended. There was blood in the kitchen, and a trail of it ran outside to Joan's car in the driveway. The phone was ripped out of the wall, and the phone book was opened to the emergency numbers section. A bloody fingerprint was also found, which could not be matched to anyone. All signs pointed to an abduction, but some strange eyewitness sightings complicated this scenario. That afternoon, a neighbor saw a dazed-looking Joan running outside her house but assumed that she was chasing one of her children. Later that day, motorists saw a woman resembling Joan walking along Route 128. Even though the woman appeared to be bloody and disoriented, no one assisted her, and she was never found. Since Route 128 was under construction at the time, there was some speculation that she fell into an excavation pit and was eventually buried under asphalt. Things got even more complicated when investigators discovered that Joan had checked out over 125 library books about murders, disappearances, and time travel throughout the summer. One of the books chronicled the story of a woman who disappeared and left blood smears behind. Since the Risch family had moved to Lincoln from New York City 6 months earlier, and Joan gave up a publishing career to raise her children, one theory was that she became unhappy with her domestic life and decided to stage her own disappearance. If that theory is true, Joan Risch has managed to stay off the radar for decades. Or just went somewhere or sometime. In 1991, 50-year-old Adam John A. Bro was a well-liked citizen of Houma, Louisiana. He was a former alcoholic who had been sober for 8 years and went out of his way to help others with the same problem. On the evening of August 28, AJ left an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and stopped off at a convenience store to purchase some milk. After that, he vanished without explanation. 2 days later, A.J.'s abandoned car was found in a park across the street from where his AA meetings were held. His wallet, checkbook, and a bag containing $165 in AA funds were inside. That very same day, there would be some unusual eyewitness sightings of the missing AJ. One of A.J.'s friends claimed that he ran into him outside a convenience store. According to the witness, AJ looked unkempt and was nervously talking on a payphone. A red compact car containing 3 unidentified men was parked nearby. Shortly thereafter, another witness who personally knew AJ saw the same car drive past his house with AJ and the 3 men inside. 4 weeks later, a woman from the town of Lockport reported that an intoxicated-looking man fitting A.J.'s description had pulled in front of her house in a van and tried to sell her some frozen fish. The police also received an anonymous, cryptic note claiming that AJ had gotten drunk and shot himself in the stomach before his body ended up in the bayou. While the note was dismissed as a prank, authorities did not dismiss the possibility that AJ had a relapse and starting drinking again, causing him to suffer memory loss. However, the sightings of AJ with the unidentified men have led his family to believe he was abducted and met with foul play. After her aspirations of being a model fell through, Bridget Pendle Williamson decided to become a registered nurse. She also got married and had a child, but Bridget's life spiraled out of control after she became involved with the wrong crowd and started abusing drugs. She essentially became a drifter and spent much of her time following the Grateful Dead around the country. The last time Bridget made contact with her family was in 1996, after a failed attempt at drug rehab in New York. She traveled to San Francisco, and her last confirmed sighting occurred in April 1997, when 23-year-old Bridget was arrested for prostitution. She never showed up for her court date, and no one knows what actually happened to her. Bridget's case would be rejuvenated when the San Francisco Chronicle ran a series of articles about the city's homeless population and made mention of a local young female drifter nicknamed the Crier. The Crier had tribal tattoos on her face and appeared to be a drug addict. She earned this nickname because she always seemed to be weeping every time she was seen wandering the streets. The Chronicle took a photograph of the Crier sleeping on a sidewalk outside Transbay Terminal. When Bridget's sister, Jacqueline Horn, saw the photo, she became convinced that the Crier might be Bridget. Jacqueline traveled to San Francisco in 2004 and circulated Bridget's photograph among the homeless community, and many of them seemed to think that Bridget and the Crier were the same person. However, Jacqueline never actually tracked down the Crier or got a definitive answer about her identity. To this day, no one knows what became of the Crier or Bridget Pendle Williamson. The San Francisco Chronicle claimed that they had found her, but this woman seems to have disappeared as fast as she was found. More to come, and stay paranoid, my friends.